Ladies and gentlegrams, what you thought was a clashing of the Canadian and Kenny created a canon effect that is now involving plenty of rappers and singers from both sides of the fence. Young Money swatting around TDE like a fly on Mike Pence. Dense digs from the defamation Don Drizzler. Nicki the Ninja tangling herself with TDE like a Twizzler. Weezy sulking sad the Super Bowl was stolen. The damage of Young Money swollen, broken, and I was hoping they were joking. But just when you thought the worst had passed, Young Money keeps fighting far above their weight class. So sit back, relax, it's just you and me. Hit that like, subscribe, and see why Young Money hates TDE. Now, ladies and gentlegrams,
I study rap battles for a living.
Past 12 months have been an absolute victory lap for the entirety of TDE and all of its associates. And along the way, Young Money kinda got hit with some collateral damage. See, of course we know, last summer the casket was carved by Kung Fu Kenny for the Canadian conniving Canuck. And just when Labrie felt stuck, Kendrick did not let up. He was announced as the Super Bowl halftime performer for 2025 in New Orleans, which sent Drake's mentor and Young Money founder Lil Wayne into a frenzy. And around the same time, Kung Fu Kenny's TDE associate, Doechii, becomes the new best female rapper on the block and quickly accomplishes several things that Young Money's queen, Nicki Minaj, still has not been able to conquer in her entire career. Doechii joined rare company with Lauryn Hill and Cardi B, becoming one of 3 female rappers to ever win Best Rap Album at the Grammy Awards in 2025, and around the same time, she actually briefly surpassed Nicki Minaj in monthly listeners on Spotify. This was around the same time that Kendrick surpassed Drake on that same platform. And if you know Young Money, you know that numbers have always mattered to the collective. They've been known for the hits, so it must have been a big blow as well when they saw TDE's First Lady SZA and Kendrick Lamar embark on a stadium worldwide tour, something no Young Money artist has ever been able to do, and both of them with the GNX tour had crushed every Young Money touring record in history. Well, actually not yet, but they're on pace to surpass Drake, who holds the record for the highest grossing hip-hop tour of all time. It's all a blur, with $320 million generated. The GNX show, just after around 23 shows, is only about $75 million behind that record, and they still have about 20 shows left, so they'll be easily beating that record. And of course, they also beat Nicki's record, as she had the highest grossing female hip-hop tour with her Gag City tour, around $108 million generated. And Lil Wayne, I mean, I don't know where he is. According to Pusha T, he feels sad when he sees Wayne on tour, or as he raps, "Flash without the fire, another multi-platinum rapper trapped and can't retire." And we know that the ascension of TDE, its associates like Kendrick, and just its roster in general, have kind of ruffled some feathers within the Young Money camp. What if I told you there was once a lot of camaraderie and collaboration between Young Money and TDE, and really throughout most of the 2010s decade, they existed together in a pretty positive space? You might ask then, what exactly went wrong? What went south to the point where, of course, Drake is beefing Kendrick and then banning TDE artists from doing shows in Canada? Or Nicki Minaj going ballistic on Doechii and SZA on Twitter? Or Lil Wayne crying about the Super Bowl, completely trying to stomp on Kendrick Lamar's big moment? There's a long history to understand why we have the hostility between these titan record labels that we have today. So in order to understand it, we gotta take it all the way back.
I study rap battles for a living.
So 2004 was a very big year. See, this was the year that both Young Money and TDE were actually founded. TDE dates back to Carson, California, when Anthony Top Dog Tiffith started up a local venture to support aspiring rappers. He wanted to guide young artists within his community, which was inspired by his own experiences and a desire to provide opportunities. The label gained traction, of course, with early signees like Ab-Soul and J-Rock, who were poised to be the superstars of the label initially, while a young Kendrick Lamar was taking notes and playing the back seat. Meanwhile, a young Lil Wayne, almost around the same age as Kendrick, had already had basically a decade of experience in the industry under his belt, being mentored and signed to Birdman on Cash Money Records. In 2004, after all the Hot Boys members had left the Cash Money label, Wayne was essentially carrying it on his back, and in return, Birdman granted him the opportunity to start his own venture, Young Money Records. Founded in around 2004-2005, Birdman and Wayne did a 51-49% split of the profits of Young Money, with 51% going to Cash Money. So Lil Wayne already off the jump was getting less of the profits than Birdman was. Initial signees included Currency and Boo, but the stars on the label didn't necessarily gain the traction that Wayne was getting on his own. See, 2004 was the first year Wayne started calling himself the best rapper alive. But there was a little bit of an asterisk to that, because he wasn't just saying I'm the best rapper alive, he was saying I'm the best rapper alive since the best rapper retired. That being Jay-Z, who had taken a step back after the Black Album in 2003. Wayne was trying to fill his shoes, and Currency even says that his deal with Young Money didn't necessarily work out, not because him and Wayne aren't friends, but because Lil Wayne was on a mission to become the best rapper alive. And at the time, a young Kendrick is taking notes. See, Wayne ascends to superstardom, and on his way up, he's introduced to various different artists to join the Young Money roster, including Drake and Nicki Minaj. Lil Wayne at the time was knocking out features after singles after albums, back to back to back in the studio every night, so he was very generous with who he worked with. Cash Money formed a connection with Top Dogg, likely through Glasses Malone, who was signed to Cash Money but who knew Kendrick very early on, and through that, Lil Wayne actually ended up in a studio session with a very young Kendrick Lamar and an aspiring rapper in J-Rock. The three collaborated on the song in 2008 called All My Life, and Kendrick actually points to this moment as being a huge inspiration for him. Watching a prime Lil Wayne knock out like 12 features in one studio session inspired Kendrick Lamar to up his work ethic.
That moment in the studio with Wayne, me and J-Rock in the studio with Wayne, I never told Wayne this. That changed my perspective about work ethic. Knocked out about 12 verses, and this is feature Wayne at the moment. And these not no motherfucking fly-by-night verses. This is set right there and thought out right in front of your face and smashing them. And he's excited about it, and he's loving music. That gave me a whole nother appreciation. And we took that same intensity and that work ethic, and we applied it moving forward.
The irony, years later, I think his hard work let Lil Wayne down, but we'll touch on that shortly. See, Top Dogg was still kind of trying to find their place in the game in the late 2000s. Meanwhile, at the same time, Young Money damn near almost seems like they're on cruise control, right? Wayne is recording like a madman with dozens of records on the charts at all times from 2007 to 2009. I think he literally did 100 features in 2008. And Nicki Minaj and Drake getting introduced to the game, it almost seemed like they pretty much snapped and popped instantaneously. When the Petty Petition Padre La Brianna dropped his third mixtape, So Far Gone, his career was so far gone. Multiple top 10 hits, cosigns from the biggest artists in the game like Kanye West and Jay-Z. He's standing behind a superstar, Lil Wayne, and he's singing and rapping. We're gonna be alright if we put Drake on every hook, as Lil Wayne put it. Drake had nothing to lose and popped off right off the rip. Same thing pretty much with Nicki Minaj, right? Her hustle lasted a little bit longer, but she popped off around the same time in 2009 after the success of Bedrock and her mixtape Beam Me Up Scotty, and before you knew it, she went on a feature run almost as revolutionary as Lil Wayne's. And both Drake and Nicki dropped their debut albums on Young Money in 2010, each of them selling over 300,000 copies in the first week, which is absolutely unheard of for a brand new artist releasing their first album. Off the heels of Wayne's back, they were destined for superstardom right away. And the run did not slow down. If anything, it just accelerated, right? Nicki went in that pop lane, releasing global hits all throughout the early 2010s. Drake was simping over Rihanna, throwing bottles at Chris Brown in the club, but still giving us some classic albums in the process. The Nothing Was the Sames, the Take Cares. And the big three in the early 2010s wasn't necessarily a collection of three artists, but actually a collection of three record labels. See, it was Kanye West's label Good Music, Lil Wayne's Young Money, and Rick Ross's Maybach Music that had the game in a chokehold from around 2010 to 2013. Now you might be asking, what changed in 2013? And I would tell you a lot.
I study rap battles for a living.
2013, in my opinion, is when the cracks in Young Money's foundation started forming. Drake was only powering up, but it seemed pretty obvious at that point that there were no other superstars on the label, right? Drake, Nicki, and Wayne were enough, but you had like 10 different artists on that roster, and at this point, Tyga is damn near getting shelved. He's trying to get out of his contract with Young Money. J Mills, Gutta, Lil Twist, T Streets, Chanel, whoever else. They kind of missed their window of opportunity to blow up when the world was introduced to the new Young Money roster in 2009, because that's when Drake, Nicki, and to a certain extent Tyga had really just overshadowed them. J Mills even talks about the fact that in 2012, him and Gutta were a little bit upset because Drake went on this Club Paradise tour where he brought out all the best rappers in the game at the time to open up for him, but he didn't invite any Young Money members. Now, it's funny because on that tour was a young Kendrick Lamar, but we'll touch on that kind of shortly. Because you're asking about the cracks in Young Money's foundation in 2013. Well, aside from the fact that it seemed like Drake, Nicki, and Wayne were the only superstars on the label, which is more than enough, the stardom, in my opinion, started to slowly trickle. And you might call this a reach, but stick with me here, alright? See, Wayne releases the Carter 4, which could now be considered maybe a classic arguably, but came out to very mixed reception. He was definitely taking a noticeable step back to let Nicki and Drake kind of do their thing. He started skateboarding more, he was teasing retirement in a couple interviews, and by 2013, he gives us the most absolutely atrocious project at the time that we had received from him, I'm Not a Human Being 2. While it was extremely experimental, it showed a blatant lack of effort in terms of offering anything of substance within the subject matter, and the hits were nowhere near the magnitude as they were on earlier projects. As for Nicki Minaj, as I said before, she was entering this global pop lane, which kind of worked to her detriment. In 2013, she received a lot of criticism at the Hot 97 Summer Jam Festival, where Peter Rosenberg called out her music for being essentially some bubblegum generic radio crap, not real rap. And from there, she kind of seemed confused in terms of where she wanted to take her career, what direction. Did she want to double down on the pop stuff like Super Bass and Starships, or did she want to cater more to the fans that came up with her, who admired the Itty Bitty Piggies, the Monster verses? That was in 2010. By 2013, she had not given us a verse of that strength pretty much ever again. And while she was still delivering the hits, they weren't as impactful as the ones on her debut album. And it seemed like in order to make some real noise, she had to kind of rely on, I wouldn't call it gimmicks, but she definitely used her assets, no pun intended, to the best of her ability. She took advantage of them, right? Of course, selling massive sex appeal on her hit Anaconda, laying the foundation for what would come about 6 years later with her rival Cardi B's song WAP. But while there was something wholesome about her hits like Starships and Super Bass, Anaconda seemed like the easiest way to kind of get a quick hit. Aside from that, her other biggest hits at the time all relied on the fact that they were posse cuts with her other Young Money label mates, Only with Drake, Lil Wayne, and Chris Brown, or Truffle Butter with the same roster. But at the same time, there was one roster that was kind of making evolutionary music seem effortless. And before we get into that, I mean, don't kill me, Barbs, all right? I understand that Nicki went on to do some massive things after 2013, but you compare her albums like Pink Print and Queen to her earlier projects like Pink Friday, the impact, the success wasn't on the same level, right? Numbers don't lie. But if you want to look at who had not only the numbers, not only the talent, not only the projects to back up the argument for them being the best record label in the mid-2000s, that was none other than TDE, with an immaculate roster of a now fully developed Kendrick Lamar, using that inspiration that he got from a prime Lil Wayne as fuel to drop some of the most revolutionary hip-hop projects of all time, like Good Kid, Mad City or To Pimp a Butterfly. You also had Schoolboy Q, who perfectly balanced strong artistry with commercial appeal, consistently bringing high-quality projects and hits to back it up. A young SZA was emerging as well. But it was really Kendrick, the flagship artist of TDE, that had the entire rap industry shaking in their boots. There was no other prime example than his verse on Control, which, drop a comment, do you think he should have name-dropped Nicki Minaj in that song too when he lists all those different rappers? Like, I understand he might have not wanted to single out just one female MC, but she was doing her thing at this time. She definitely merited a spot in that list of him dropping pretty much all the hottest artists in the game. And she was definitely the hottest, the rapper in the game, if you know what I mean. And while Drake was dominating the early 2010s with, again, some arguably classic albums, and Take Care of Nothing was the same, like I said before, it seemed like he was almost on cruise control for a hot little minute, as he didn't really have any real competition, right? Like, we had some amazing rappers in the blog era, but in terms of who was dropping albums as massive as Drake, who could you make the argument for that in the early 2010s? Kanye, after My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, really went a much more experimental route. Lil Wayne, again, was more focused on his own artists becoming superstars than he was at maintaining that best rapper alive position. Eminem and Jay-Z occasionally came around, dropped some massive projects, but they were taking on a more veteran role. And as far as all the rappers of the blog era who emerged with Drake, I mean, he was miles ahead of them from a mainstream perspective, right? So much so to the point where he's taking them all out as openers on his Club Paradise tour. A$AP Rocky, Meek Mill, 2 Chainz, French Montana, Waka Flocka, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole. These were all openers on that tour. Drop a comment if you ever got to see that show live. I don't think it was until that Control verse that the game started looking like, okay, maybe TDE, maybe King Kung Fu Kenny can truly take the crown against the Canadian clown. Yes, Good Kid, Mad City was miles ahead of anything Young Money was doing at the time, but Kendrick was still a newcomer. It was only when he planted that flag on Control asserting the fact that he was coming for the crown of his entire generation, that the conversation really started shifting from Drake being the biggest rapper of this generation, gifting out features and then being like Drake featuring Drake, the Drake stimulus package, he's under Young Money, he's killing it, so was Nicki Minaj, to, okay, now we have TDE on the rise. Schoolboy, SZA, Kendrick, and before you know it, Drake's entire Nothing Was the Same rollout became centered around that control verse. People asking him in interviews what he thought about it. Him crying about the fact that Kendrick name dropped him and then saw him at the VMAs and acted like nothing was wrong. And Kendrick wasn't backing down, and I think the perfect way to sum up this era was his BET cypher where he rapped, "Nothing was the same since they dropped Control," and tucked the sensitive rapper back in his pajama clothes. And if there's one thing about Young Money, and I think it's because I have a whole video calling them basically spoiled brats. I think they got everything they ever wanted throughout their early careers, and because of that, they would resultingly throw temper tantrums when anything didn't go their way. Like I said before, Lil Wayne came up under Birdman. He was like Birdman's son. He got anything he ever wanted from Birdman, and because at one point he was the only Cash Money member left, he was treated like a little prince, right? And then he started giving out the hits. He started selling 1 million in the first week. He got whatever the hell he wanted. And he only let his Young Money counterparts surpass him. When Birdman started investing in another artist who took massive inspiration from Lil Wayne, Young Thug, Lil Wayne was not too welcoming of a newcomer possibly filling Lil Wayne's void. Again, it was around 2013 when things started to crumble a little bit in the foundation of Young Money, and by 2014, Birdman attempts to sign Young Thug and develop him as an artist. But Young Thug says that when he first met Lil Wayne, even though he was massively inspired by Wayne, Wayne didn't even want to shake his hand.
The first day that nigga goddamn didn't dap me up.
Oh, just left you hanging?
Tried me. You know, it just kept going on. One time I dapped him up. This how he dapped me. That one, like, I'm like, hey, listen, bro. If I touch your hand again, one more anyway.
Right.
I'm never touching your hand again.
Right.
You inspired me.
And aside from, Drake being butthurt about the Control verse, you can't fully make the argument that he didn't at least embrace competition. While he only really did so when it was beneficial to him, of course, the J. Coles, the ASAPs, the Kendricks, they were all smaller artists than him. So it was a good look for him to bring them out on tour. But it wasn't such a great look when Kendrick actually started gunning for the same position Drake was in. However, Drake never went as far as to refuse a handshake, right? Lil Wayne was not accepting of Young Thug, viewing him as direct competition since Young Thug was potentially going to join the Cash Money roster and of course sounded incredibly like Wayne. Thug chalks it up to Wayne essentially being so spoiled by Birdman that when anything doesn't go his way or when a new artist steps in, he doesn't take kindly to it.
If you had to put your finger on a why Lil Wayne don't like you, could you figure it out?
I think it's because he's just been with Birdman his whole life, and he's just so spoiled to the point where it's like he's really spoiled. He's been a millionaire. He's been a superstar since he was 9 years old. So he don't know nothing but his way. The first thing that don't go his way, it don't have nothing in the world to do with me.
And the thing is, before we saw the spiral of the Sexy Red stunt double, we saw Nicki Minaj kind of going down a similar path as Wayne here, right? Cardi B stepped in the game, Megan Thee Stallion stepped in, Lotto. Nicki Minaj beefed with them all. For the first half of the 2010s decade, Nicki Minaj would win Best Female MC every single year at the BET Hip Hop Awards. There was no competition for her. As soon as there was, is when you started seeing her being presented as a lot more bitter, looking like she's playing catch-up to Cardi B back in 2018, crashing out on Twitter over not getting the #1 album, spazzing out on multiple artists, on the Grammys, on the NFL. It all stemmed from the fact that competition actually stepped in the form of other female MCs. But let's rewind a little bit, because in 2015, Young Money would essentially completely crumble, at least from a financial perspective. Remember how I said that Birdman owned 51% of the profits of Young Money and Wayne owned 49%? Well, Wayne got on Twitter in late 2014 to say that the Carter 5, his upcoming project, could not be released because Birdman and Cash Money were holding it hostage, not paying him his profits. He wanted off the label and nothing to do with them. And just like that, Young Money had no home base, right? They were signed under Cash Money. Like Pusha T said, you're signed to one guy who signed to another guy. With Wayne wanting to strip off Young Money from the Cash Money imprint, where was Young Money to go? Where were Nicki and Drake to go? Were they going to side with Wayne, Birdman, Were they going to ride for Wayne during this legal battle? Where would their profits go? Would it continue going to Cash Money as they're getting sued by Lil Wayne and Young Money, where Drake and Nicki were directly signed under? It was hard to tell, but this really frustrated Lil Wayne to the point where he even briefly announced that he was so mentally defeated that he might officially retire. And it was during that time when one artist who took immense inspiration from Lil Wayne drunkenly hopped on Instagram Live playing old Lil Wayne records, rapping along to them, and pleaded with Lil Wayne to not retire. And that was none other than TDE superstar at the time, Kendrick Lamar.
Nigga talking about retiring and shit. That. Retire, quit and rap, whatever you want to call it. That. No. 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 No.
So as you can see, Kendrick Lamar is still extremely vocal about his admiration, his love for Lil Wayne, but for his protege Drake, the feelings weren't quite mutual. And this is when the Cold War between TDE and Young Money truly started.
I study rap battles for a living.
There had been long-time rumors that TDE executives like Punch had put Drake's picture on the wall in the recording studio, said, this is the guy we're trying to destroy. This is the guy we're trying to be like. Now, these are just rumors, right? But it was obvious in Kendrick's career that, again, he was gunning for that top spot. And in order to get there, you couldn't just have the critically acclaimed projects. You had to have the mainstream commercial success to back it up if you really wanted to be the biggest and best rapper alive. You can argue all day that sales don't matter, but look at every top rapper in the game within history, right? Tupac, Biggie, DMX, Jay-Z, 50 Cent, Eminem, Outkast, Lil Wayne, whoever. One thing they all had in common was that at the peak of their careers, they had monster mainstream success and quality albums to back it up. Kendrick Lamar no doubt had that, but it wasn't until his 2017 release Damn where things got taken up to the next level and he officially really became intense competition to Drake on all fronts. Not just from a perspective of who was the better rapper, who was putting out the better projects, but it was now who was selling the most, who was putting out the most hits. And amidst their Cold War that spanned years, that almost reached a boiling point in 2017 when Kendrick rapped on the Heart Part 4, Say My Name and I Promise That You'll See Candyman. It was officially in that year that both Drake and Kendrick would drop projects and Drake would actually end up selling less than Kendrick Lamar. More Life sold around 500,000 in the first week, while Damn sold 600,000. And this marked a little bit of a shift in the tides. At the same time, you're seeing Carti B slowly take over as the most successful female rapper at that moment. And Nicki Minaj is not happy about it, but Drake is handling it from a little bit more of a calculated approach. He actually embraced Kendrick Lamar outselling him, commenting on a picture of all their sales numbers saying, it's beautiful that our music is moving. What I found really weird was that you'd even end up seeing Kendrick Lamar feature on Lil Wayne's long-awaited Carter 5 album in 2018, and Drake was not on there. But Drake would continue kind of trying to make amends or be friends with Kendrick Lamar, right? But at the same time, doing these weird backhanded things where you couldn't tell if he's dissing him or embracing him. Like, it's very weird that Drake showed up to the 2022 Mr. Morale and the Big Stepper show in Toronto, right? Rented out a booth and watched his greatest competitor perform his most vulnerable project. But about a year later, Drake would actually end up allegedly reaching out to Kendrick Lamar to feature on the Big 3 anthem First Person Shooter with J. Cole. Kendrick, of course, would decline and later respond to that record in the form of Like That, emphasizing that there's no Big 3, it's just Big Him, and of course you know what happens next. But at the same time, the 2025 Super Bowl was kind of looming around the corner and it was announced to be in New Orleans. And Wayne, who a couple of years prior had announced that the Carter 6 was on the way, ironically at a Young Money reunion show, well, Lil Wayne now was making it known that he definitely would have been honored to perform at the Super Bowl in his hometown in 2025. He did multiple interviews stating it.
Of course, the Super Bowl is in New Orleans. I think it's in 2025 or something like that.
He's doing it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Come on, man. Say
I'm
it,
not
Wayne.
sure
You
what
gotta
shit.
say it,
I
Wayne.
don't. They know. I will not lie to you. I have not got a call.
Hey, Jay.
But we all praying. You know, we praying. We keeping our fingers crossed. I'm working hard. I'm gonna make sure this next album and everything I do is killer. So I'm gonna make it very hard for them to. I want to just make it hard for them not to
pick
holler
you
at
to
the
do
boy.
it.
Let's think about this for a second. Lil Wayne, headline Super Bowl in New Orleans. How badly do you want to hear those words?
Just as bad as I want to see my name at the top of that list when I was that whatever age it was, and I would bust into the office and get that Billboard magazine.
But when the time came around for them to announce the actual performer of the show, it was a no-brainer that it'd be Kendrick Lamar after the massive 2024 that he had just had. And this left Young Money in absolute shambles. This was Lil Wayne's reaction to it.
That hurt a lot. You know what I'm talking about? It hurt a whole lot. I blame myself for not being mentally prepared for a letdown and for just automatically mentally putting myself in that position like somebody told me that was my position. It made me feel like not getting this opportunity. And when I felt like you guys reminded me that I ain't without y'all. And that's an amazing reality.
And Nicki Minaj really went harder than him. I'll let old rapaholics tell you because I just did a video about Nicki Minaj's whole crisis with, Jay-Z, Rock Nation, all her outbursts on Twitter, but it really all stemmed from her outburst that Jay-Z chose Kendrick Lamar over Lil Wayne for the Super Bowl halftime show. So shut your mouth and listen to old rapaholics. One dude took a knee, the other dude took a bag. He's gonna get you guys in line every effing time. Here she's referring, of course, to the fact that Colin Kaepernick, an NFL player, had been taking a knee during the national anthem in protest of police brutality. And of course, then Jay-Z and his company Rock Nation go on to sign a deal with the NFL after everything Colin went through. And Jay-Z in an interview had said, I think we're past the point of kneeling. She's saying here, one dude kneeled in protest of the injustices and fought the corporation. The other dude teamed up with the corporation for the bag. The tweets would get more direct and intense with Nicki saying, got everything in the world, still spiteful and evil, disgusting. Be happy, go be effing happy. In rap business, in women business, when you got the politicians and the police, you good though. Plus that ugly Laffy Taffy alien, LMFAO. I think here she's referring to Megan Thee Stallion as the Laffy Taffy alien. She keeps going. I tried to tell y'all, but y'all wanted brunch. LMFAO, I'm on a effing roll. Wait, I'm hacked. And here, of course, she's referring to the Rock Nation brunch. Again, the same one that she accused Megan of becoming a bully after attending. One fan would realize this was about the Super Bowl, tweeting at Nicki saying, wait, this is about Lil Wayne? Oh, girl, sit this one out, because he wouldn't be doing this. Nicki replied saying, oh, you think speaking up on injustice within your workplace should only be done if it's for a person who would do it for you? I'm really the realest person. Wow. Denying a young black man what he rightfully put into the game for no reason other than your ego. Your hatred for Birdman, Drake, and Nicki got you punishing Lil Wayne? Lil Wayne, the GOAT? Noya, what's good? Eminem stood firm on having 50 Cent come out at the Super Bowl. A white man. This stuff is sad. House N-word things. It's good for them. No loyalty? Welp. Then people will keep sunning you. Of course, at this point, she's talking about Jay-Z for not choosing Lil Wayne to be at the Super Bowl, right? So by this point, Young Money is in a very interesting position, right? We're not really seeing them collaborate with each other as often as they once were. Their dominance in the mainstream was far less than what it was in the early 2010s. And by this point, TDE is undoubtedly the much bigger record label and just making all the right moves, right? Like SZA puts out these 2 blockbuster albums. One of them, I believe, is already diamond. One of them, I think, sold 7 million copies already. Kendrick Lamar, who, yes, at this point, he's no longer signed to TDE, but still closely affiliated with the camp. He's putting out number 1 hit after number 1 hit. He just dismantled Drake's entire character in their rap beef. So much so to the point where even Lil Wayne is singing Not Like Us on stage while performing. And speaking of his performances, I mean, if you want a clear demonstration of the slow, sad decline of my GOAT Lil Wayne's career, look no further than all the examples of him lashing out at his different concerts. I mean, there was the one example of the crowd not being receptive enough to his new Young Money artist member as he performed, so Lil Wayne just cut off the whole show.
We appreciate it, but we ain't about to be bending over backwards for these folks. We worked too hard for this. We worked way too hard. This was my artist Adin, that was Twist, that was John. We on Young Money. We appreciate y'all time.
Then there's the example of Lil Wayne's DJ not doing his job right, so Lil Wayne just cuts the whole show. There's also the example of when Lil Wayne went on tour with the rock band Blink-182, which is a horrible fit for the type of audience that Wayne attracts, and he was able to see that because the crowd was not receptive to him, so he decided to just basically leave the tour midway through because the fans weren't loud enough for him.
Hold on, I just want the people to know, if you're wondering, please forgive me, but I am so not used to performing to a crowd and there's not too many, like still phone. That's not my swag. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna be able to do this tour, but make some noise for Blink-182 for including me anyway. This might be my last night though. Let's go.
But the worst, by far the worst thing I believe he did at a concert was he made his entire Lil Louisiana Fest in New Orleans a pity party over the fact that he wasn't chosen for the Super Bowl halftime show. He's reuniting with the Hot Boys on stage. He's creating this massive legendary moment for his city, for his own legacy, and he's choosing it as the platform to further complain about the fact that he was, as he puts it, robbed of the opportunity to perform at the Super Bowl instead of Kendrick Lamar.
During my lifetime, the first Super Bowl was here. I made sure I bought tickets at the beginning of the season. I did the same when I moved to Miami. I was able to bring my mama that sleep. She was able to bring my family and other people from New Orleans, and they had a ball. That moment I said to myself, I want to be on stage for the Super Bowl one day for my mama. And I worked my ass off to get that position. It was ripped away from me.
And we'll touch on the outcome of that whole, Lil Wayne versus Kendrick Super Bowl thing shortly. But speaking of performances, we got to look at how after this beef, Drake leveraged his connections in Toronto to get multiple TDE artist shows canceled. First, it was Schoolboy Q, who was supposed to perform in the summer of 2024 right after the beef in Toronto. And he got on Twitter to say, "They just canceled my show in Toronto. Canadian police don't want nobody from TDE performing. Top Dog was just with Lil Wayne and Baby, SMH. PARTYNEXTDOOR just had a show in LA. If we wanted to get y'all, we would have just done it. Now when somebody get hurt, don't cry." And this pattern would continue with other TDE artists, most notably Sir, who had a show scheduled in Toronto in the summer of 2024. It got cancelled, rescheduled to 2025, and when he finally got on stage in Toronto, he implied to the crowd that Drake had something to do with his show getting cancelled because he was a partial owner of the venue, and that Drake had him tied up in this beef that he had nothing to do with.
I kind of got caught in the middle of a beef that I had to do with. I just want to say right now, I did not cancel my show last year. Drake did. But real talk, it was like some complications, and it was too close to home for a lot of people. So the venue in Toronto, which was partially owned by Drake, canceled the show completely. Then when we tried to switch venues, the next venue was like, nah, we ain't f***ing with it. I ain't taking no motherfucking chance. You gonna get your ass beat in Toronto. Right? But I'm happy to be here tonight, man.
So as you can see here, right, there's this constant effort from Young Money's acts to either silence the competition or throw temper tantrums when they can't get their way. And Kendrick Lamar would emphasize this on the intro track to his GNX album, Whacked Out Murals, where he rapped, "I used to bump the Carter 3, held my rolly chain proud, the irony. I think my hard work let Lil Wayne down." Lil Wayne would respond to these bars by tweeting out saying, "What the F I do? I just be chillin', I'm minding my business, and they're still trying to come for my head. Please let this giant sleep. I beg you, I shall destroy if disturbed." And what did he mean by destroyed if disturbed? What did he mean when he said that he'd be working extremely hard on his next album to be such an obvious pick for the Super Bowl because of how amazing his music was? Well, he meant that he would be destroying the game with the Carter 6, and I don't mean that in a good way. See, after years of Wayne building the Young Money Foundation, elevating the imprint with each new Carter release, the world was waiting to see what Wayne would do with the Carter 6. after tweeting out so confidently that the Super Bowl was robbed from him, that he would destroy if disturbed after hearing Kendrick Lamar's bars, saying again that the Carter 6 would be so good that him being the Super Bowl pick would be undeniable. I mean, ironically, the Carter 6 came out after the Super Bowl, and when it came out, it really became evident to the world that the Lil Wayne that we once loved was no longer here. You guys can check out my other Lil Wayne videos. I've touched on the Carter 6 more than enough, but again, it just marked another chapter in the large decline of all the Young Money artists and their resonance within hip-hop. Drake just suffered the biggest blow he ever has throughout his entire career. Lil Wayne may have just proven to the world that he was washed from the perspective of actually creating strong, full-length albums. And as for Nicki Minaj, well, she put out the occasional hit. She'd have her moments, but at this point, she's becoming more known for the outbursts on Twitter than she is for the actual music. Attacking again everyone from Cardi B to Lotto to Megan Thee Stallion, Rock Nation. The only one who didn't make that list yet was TDE. But don't worry, it was coming. See, after the Grammy Awards and the Super Bowl, TDE reached heights we have never seen from the label. Kendrick Lamar would absolutely sweep with his Drake diss track, Not Like Us, receiving 5 Grammy Awards, breaking the record for the first hip-hop song, the first diss song nonetheless, to ever win in the main categories for Best Song and Best Record. At the same time, I believe SZA won a Grammy as well, and of course, Doechii starts to receive a massive surge in popularity thanks to her win for her project Alligator Bites Never Heal as the Best Rap Album of the Year. Because of this in the Super Bowl show, Kendrick Lamar, SZA, and Doechii receive massive spikes of monthly listeners on Spotify, and this is where the botting rumors start coming into question, right? The industry plant rumors. Of course, Drake, with his lawsuit against UMG, he's accusing them of streaming and botting Kendrick Lamar's music. So that's what the OVHOs are running with. Anytime Kendrick surpasses Drake, Doechii surpasses Nicki Minaj, whatever the case is, naysayers point to the good old industry plant narrative. And it's pretty substantial, right? Because aside from Doja Cat, who predominantly makes pop music, I don't believe there was a single other female rap artist who had surpassed Nicki in monthly listeners for at least the last few years, aside from maybe Cardi B. So for Doechii to do it as such a newcomer, that's definitely a blow, right? And it's kind of reminiscent, her come up to the come up of Drake and Nicki's, in how quick it really was when they first came in the game. But you had to remember, she just had the Grammy win, and she just had her massive hit, Anxiety. And the way that Spotify monthly listeners work is these are not just like your die-hard core fans, your listeners who tune into your music every single day. Monthly listeners attributes to the new people who are actually checking out your profile. So it makes sense that during big moments like a Grammy win, or when you have a massive song hitting the charts and it goes viral, but you're not necessarily known from the global public yet, that new people are going to be checking out your Spotify page, which rapidly boosts up your monthly listeners. People think this was all botted, this was all fake, but again, the numbers don't lie. You could go check out the streams for themselves. So because of all these new eyeballs on Kendrick after the Super Bowl, on Doechii after the Grammys, and on her hit Anxiety, both their monthly listeners see a massive increase. But what goes up must come down, and because the hype of the Grammys and the Super Bowl had died down, Kendrick and Doechii's monthly listeners, after a few months, had gone down with them. See, Kendrick went from around 110 million monthly listeners, breaking Drake's record for the rapper with the most monthly listeners in Spotify history. He then went down to around 72 million monthly listeners about 4 months later, and is now a couple million monthly listeners behind Drake. Doechii, on the other hand, was sitting around 60 million monthly listeners at her peak when Anxiety and her Grammy win first went viral, but now that that hype has kind of died down, she's sitting at around 33 million monthly listeners. That's around a 30 million drop. And of course, Nicki Minaj is going to celebrate this on Twitter, because any female rapper that starts to get more success than Nicki is an immediate threat, right? So she hops on Twitter, and bear with me, guys, because this is going to be a long rant. It starts off with Nicki tweeting out, MTM minus 30 million, aka minus 30 million monthly listeners that Doechii lost. SZA chimes in to defend her TDE label mate, saying, Mercury retrograde. Don't take the base, lol, silly goose. AKA Doechii, like, don't take the bait on this, right? Like, Nicki Minaj wants to drag you in a beef here. Just keep going. Mercury retrograde. The world will keep on spinning. So Nicki replies saying, "Go draw your freckles back on, Buki. Liar, liar, pants on fire," sounding like a effing dead dog. And I don't know why she makes this whole campaign about getting justice for Desiree Perez, the CEO of Roc Nation's daughter. And SZA claps back saying, "I don't give a F about none of that weird stuff that you're popping." And this just completely unleashes the most insane side of Nicki Minaj. So she tweets back out saying, "Be looking and sounding like she got stung by an F&B, ... draws on my fake freckles." She posts a picture of TDE and says, "Me after I suck some good zick. Guarantee you wouldn't fight a man. We have every tweet of your incessant bullying, lying, and more. Your name was added to that crap list, crappy drawers. Same thing that make you laugh, make you crap." What's effed up is that the pawns always go out sad, broke, and cursed, most of them never even knowing they were pawns. Then she makes a creative acronym for TDE saying, Tiny D Executive. Then SZA responds to a fan who says, "You really don't want to start this, girl. If you were crying before, you're really going to cry now when the barbs get at you." And SZA says, "I get bullied by millions online every day, then step my butt back out on a packed stadium tour where people show me real love in real life. My parents are healthy and I'm the most successful I've ever been. Get some effing perspective and bark at the wall." And someone replies to her saying, "Girl, you're on a joint tour. Do that crap solo. I want to see something." Because, of course, she's on the stadium tour with Kendrick Lamar. They're implying that she can't do it on her own. So SZA says, "What the F you want to see? Let me know." And as you can see here, it shows that her SOS tour grossed $100 million. Just as much as Nicki's tour did. And Nicki didn't like that, but we'll get to that shortly because SZA continues saying, "LMAO, let me go back to being calm, shy, and meek. Y'all have blessed nights. See you tomorrow for night 2 in Paris." And SZA emphasizes that she wasn't even talking about Nicki to begin with because a fan says, "Baby, you inserted yourself in some stuff that didn't involve you. You are not the victim." And SZA said, "I wasn't even talking about or to anyone. I had just got off stage talking about Retrograde. People added me. Yes, I'm mad. Now, do you need that?" And I just think it's crazy. There's one fan chimed in to say female artists that Nicki has started a beef with. And mind you, this is a Cardi B stan account, but man, is this list long. You have Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, Doja Cat, Lotto, Iggy, Lil Kim, Remy Ma, Queen Latifah, Missy Elliott, Asian Doll, City Girls, Beyonce, SZA, Doechii. That's almost as big of an op list as Drake has right now. Insane. And you might be asking, what actually started Nicki Minaj's tirade here against TDE? Well, one fan pointed out to the fact that TDE Punch had tweeted out broken Barbies, which obviously, you know, Nicki's fan base is known as the Barbs, calling them broken, but really, this is just the title to one of his artists' newest song. And one fan pointed that out saying, so folks thought this was a diss, but it was the promotion of a new artist. Got it. Or maybe her attacking SZA is because of the fact that SZA was telling Cardi B that she needs to get a verse on her upcoming album. You know that Nicki doesn't like other artists working with her ops. But Nicki Minaj responds to SZA tapping out of this Twitter beef saying, "Shut up, ugly, hashtag again, justice for Demar. I'm in a meeting, so I don't know if you were still talking crap or not. And if you weren't, then I'll delete this later." But she didn't delete it, and she doubled down, posting a picture of SZA saying, "The girl damn near broke that man back and leg. She's fat, chubby, and skinny at the same time. B, where are those 30 million streams that disappeared on Spotify like your faux freckles? Botting tweets when you're arguing is just as weird as SZA." And speaking of botting streams, SZA takes this time during this beef to reflect on the fact that her album SOS was now approaching diamond status. Meanwhile, Nicki continues saying, "This is what they be wanting when they release music. Speak on me or about me at your own risk. When I'm discussing the abuse I've suffered at the hands of any man, if you as a woman choose to get in the field, you're gonna have to leave bloody. Figuratively speaking, of course. I'll expose more of your lies, and I tell y'all all the time I play the long game. So while y'all celebrated insignificant wins and fake laughed for hours, God was already working. Sit this out. Trust. Ego won't win this one. Truth is truth. It doesn't change. The lies and deceit and abuse of power ain't gonna cut it no mo, no mo." Of course, Snaka Diddler had to jump into the drama, noting that Nicki Minaj reposted images that SZA purchased after the paparazzi posted a photo of her looking extremely chopped. These were the messages she sent to fan pages threatening to strike them unless they were deleted. So basically there was a paparazzi image of SZA. They're claiming that she hit up fans, hit up paparazzi to delete them. And one message says, "Hey, I purchased and legally own those paparazzi photos you posted. Please delete them. It's copyright infringement." Nicki also pointed out that SZA had been dissing Rihanna and Beyonce way back in the day before she was famous, reposting this picture where SZA said, "I don't get it. Neither Rihanna or Ciara can't hold a note worth a damn. One's just been worse than the other, so what's the beef? Nicki said, B.I. Girl, hit that auto-tune button, Miss Meek and Mild Freckles. Then she posts a picture of SZA, where a fan is drawing freckles on her. Then the most hilarious thing happens. So again, remember, SZA celebrating her success in that she's on this tour. Her album's almost diamond. So Nicki Minaj reposts a fan who looks up on AI, is Nicki Minaj more successful than SZA? And the AI says Nicki Minaj is generally considered more successful than SZA. So Nicki says, oh, oop. Nicki continues her outburst saying, the girl used to be on Twitter dissing Rihanna, B, etc. But when it was time to suck Z and get opportunities from them, she drew them freckles on and got to Essen, right? Allegedly. Like B, stop being jealous of women who you secretly would kill to be up their butts. These men putting batteries in y'all backs and y'all stupid enough to keep it going, not peeping that it's not going to end well for them or you. Buzz off, Bumblebeena. B put out a whole new album as a deluxe to an already existing album that was out for like a year or two, so the original album could break records. Like, what in the insecure lack of morals and integrity you doing? I thought she was like a real artist. Girl, bye. And this is in reference again to SZA's SOS album, which during this beef, she posted on Twitter that it was approaching diamond status, selling 10 million copies. Nicki's like, nah, I'm considered, AI says I'm more of a successful artist than SZA. And SZA released a deluxe of SOS to boost the sales numbers. What is this BS? Well, I had to come in with the facts, all right? So follow me on Twitter, at Rapaholics or at hiphophistory_. You can look up either one and follow me. We don't have many followers, so any follower counts. And I responded to Nicki saying, where do you think SZA got the idea from to release a deluxe album of an original album to boost sales? Nicki did Pink Friday, then Pink Friday Roman Reloaded edition, then Pink Friday Roman Reloaded the re-up. You gave her the blueprint to do this, or should I say the pink print? Because yeah, this was something Nicki has been doing for years, right? Re-releasing her albums. Like, her most recent album was called Pink Friday 2. The original one came out in like 2010. She is the originator of this concept. But she continues saying, wait, does SZA think she's more successful than me? LOL, y'all catch me up, please. SZA, if every song you've ever done vanished right now, the music business wouldn't even miss you. I've been to countries that never heard of you. I know you're not that stupid, are you? Stadiums? Did you look at the venues I played on my own headline festival tour out of the country last year? Have you ever headlined to 80K people? What have you done besides yodel with autotune that needed retuning? Boo, I'm an icon, you're not. The end. Pay that man for almost breaking his back. Why didn't you speak up when your executive was bullying and harassing me? These botted numbers on all platforms have y'all losing y'all mother effing minds. You the type that wouldn't been quiet in school trying to fit in. You're still having no clue who you are. I know you went nights without washing that musty face. How you remember exactly where every freckle go? Desiree Perez, we want to discuss your daughter's lawsuit. And did you do your deposition? Oh, okay. This is kind of funny, man. I'm like cracking up reading this. Like, what does Desiree Perez have to do with any of this, right? She's just bringing her in on this rant. She continues, we call the girl Mizza. She's been miserable going on 2 decades. And I mean, there was more to this. Like, I don't know. I'll spare you guys the details. But one important detail, I think, since Nicki Minaj is discussing who's the more successful artist, well, a fan pulled up the receipts. And as you can see here, these are Nicki Minaj's stats and these are SZA's. And SZA has only been around for a very short time. Ironically, she first came in the game when Nicki Minaj was battling Cardi B for who was the most relevant female MC in around 2017. Around the same time, you're seeing Drake and Kendrick Lamar slowly have this shift where Kendrick is selling as much, if not more, than Drake on certain projects, which then, of course, escalates into their beef, which then somehow Lil Wayne gets involved in because even though he inspired Kendrick, even though he inspired all of these artists, in the end, real artistry will prevail. And we're seeing the curtain being peeled back on all the resentment and the temper tantrums Young Money is throwing when any competition steps in their way. But let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you in the next one.